What if I told you that the fall of Rome didn't start with swords and battles, but with a coin? The fall of Rome, the true story of money. When most people imagine the fall of Rome, the same image always comes to mind. Barbarians at the gates, legions collapsing, emperors poisoned, palaces in chaos. But here's the truth. Empires rarely fall because of outside forces. They collapse from within. And the most corrosive poison behind that collapse has always had the same name: money. Rome didn't fall just because of invasions or corrupt rulers. Rome fell because its money collapsed, because its currency lost meaning. And here's the strange part: the lessons from that collapse are still relevant today. Because modern economies are playing the same game, manipulating money, deceiving people, and pretending there won't be consequences. Let's set the scene together. For centuries, Rome's economy rested on a single foundation: the silver denarius. First minted around 211 B.C., it was almost pure silver, trusted not just in Rome, but across the known world. Soldiers were paid in denarii, merchants demanded it, and ordinary citizens saved their wealth in it. The denarius was more than a coin. It was trust in physical form. In a way, it was faith in Rome turned into metal. As long as Rome was strong, its money was strong. If people believed in Rome, they believed in its currency. But running an empire isn't cheap. Legions demanded pay, roads had to be built, aqueducts maintained, wars financed. By the 2nd century A.D., Rome was overstretched. Germanic tribes in the north, Parthians in the east, revolts within. Expenses soared, revenues couldn't keep up. And so, emperors turned to an ancient trick: debasement. Raising taxes was always unpopular, so they took another route. They started reducing the silver content of the denarius. The numbers tell the story. Under Augustus, the empire's golden age, the denarius was about 95% silver. By the time of Caracalla, early 3rd century, it had fallen to around 50%. By Gallienus's reign in the 262nd, the silver content was under 5%. The coin that was once solid metal had become mostly bronze, covered in a thin silver wash. And people noticed. They could see it, feel it, hear it. Confidence gave way to inflation. A measure of wheat that once cost 1 denarius suddenly cost dozens. This wasn't abstract economics, it wrecked real lives. Soldiers demanded higher pay as prices soared. Merchants refused debased coins. Ordinary people returned to barter because Rome's money was no longer trusted. But Rome's rulers didn't learn, they doubled down. Let's mint more coins. Maybe volume will fix value. But when something loses its worth, printing more of it never helps. And thus began the vicious cycle. The same inflationary spiral that history would repeat again and again. Then came the crisis of the 3rd century. From 235 to 284 A.D., Rome fell into total chaos. In just 50 years, invasions, plagues, civil wars, economic collapse. Emperors rose and fell every few months, most ended in assassination. And behind the political drama was a deeper, deadlier issue: a broken currency. Taxes were collected in coins, losing value by the day. Farmers abandoned their lands rather than pay. Trade collapsed. In desperation, the government tried everything: forced labor, price controls, new laws. Nothing worked. Then came Emperor Diocletian. He had to act. In 301 A.D., he issued the Edict on Maximum Prices, a law that fixed the prices of over 1,000 goods and wages. And those who broke the rules? Executed. You can guess the result: a complete disaster. You can't fix prices when money itself is broken. The black market exploded, official trade vanished, and people learned a hard truth: no law can make worthless money valuable again. Eventually, Rome abandoned the denarius entirely. Emperor Constantine introduced a new coin, the Solitas around 312 AD. It was pure gold, stable, and it lasted for centuries in the Byzantine Empire. But for the Western Empire, it was already too late. The collapse of the denarius had eaten Rome from within. The army could no longer be fed, trade had disintegrated, trust was gone. Rome didn't fall in a single day. It unraveled slowly, quietly, and the thread that began the unraveling was money. So what's the lesson here? Simple. Destroy the money, destroy the empire. Rome thought it could trick its people by minting coins that looked the same but held less silver. Modern governments do the same. Not with metal, but with paper and digits. They print, they manipulate interest rates, they inflate away debt. And the outcome is always the same. The people pay the price. Wealth evaporates. Trust collapses. Rome learned this the hard way. If we ignore it, we'll face the same fate. History didn't end, it just changed costumes. Now, let's fast forward to the 20th century. After World War I, Germany was crushed by the reparations of the Treaty of Versailles. The government's only solution was to print money, just like Rome once did. The result? Hyperinflation of 1,923. Before the war, a loaf of bread cost 1 mark. By the fall of 1,923, it cost 200 billion marks. People hauled their wages home in wheelbarrows. Pensioners starved. Debtors were freed. The wealthy grew wealthier. And that collapse laid the groundwork for Hitler's rise. A century later, the same story played out in Zimbabwe. In the 2000s, as production fell and debt grew, the government turned to the printing press. By 2008, inflation reached an unimaginable level, 89.7 sextillion% per year. Prices doubled every day. Shops couldn't change price tags fast enough. Eventually, Zimbabwe abandoned its own money, switching to US dollars and South African rand. Once again, the government thought it could cheat reality. And once again, the people paid the price. But you don't need to look only at the extremes. Even the world's strongest economies are following the same path. Take the United States. In 1971, President Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. From that moment, the dollar was no longer backed by gold, only by trust in government. And just like in Rome, the temptation to print became irresistible. Debt exploded. The money supply ballooned. Inflation became a constant companion. We may not carry wheelbarrows of cash today, but the erosion is real. What $1 bought in 1971 now costs more than $6. The coins look the same. The bills look the same. But the value has been hollowed out, and governments hide it brilliantly. They call inflation growth. They tell workers, your wages are rising, but prices rise faster. They call debt investment. They point to stock markets as proof of wealth, even though most people own no stocks at all. In short, modern leaders aren't much different from Roman emperors. They pretend everything's fine, while quietly draining value from every coin, every bill, every paycheck. So what's the difference today? Scale. Rome's collapse was imperial. Weimar's was national. Zimbabwe's was local. But today, it's global. Every major economy runs on debt and fiat currency. Central banks print trillions at the first sign of crisis. The next collapse won't belong to one empire, it'll belong to everyone. And once again, it won't be the elites who suffer. It'll be the millions who live on wages, pensions, and savings. People like you and me. So, here are 3 lessons to take away from Rome's story. 1. Inflation is not an accident. It's policy, a silent tax that destroys nations. 2. Real wealth isn't on paper. It's in land, skills, production, and resources. 3. No stability lasts forever. Romans would have laughed if told their coins would one day be worthless. Germans in 1913 would have never believed they'd carry wages in wheelbarrows. Zimbabweans in the 1980 seconds thought independence meant prosperity. They were all wrong. Rome teaches us this: when money stops being real, society unravels. Contracts fail. Trade halts. Armies dissolve. Governments lose legitimacy. When the barbarians arrive at the gates, it's already too late, because the real enemy was inside the treasury all along. And here's the final thought. History doesn't repeat, but if you don't understand it, it will crush you. Rome's currency crisis wasn't just about bad emperors or greed. It was about the fragility of money when abused by power. And that fragility still lives with us today. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. Because history still holds the answers, and I'll show you where to find them.